family-owned shop in Loganville, Soesby's Garage for all your automotive repair needs. We service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. We repair engines, alternators, brakes, alignments, AC systems, and more, using certified technicians with over 90 years of combined experience. We also offer same-day service for some repairs. Soesby's Garage, 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville. Dependable, honest, and fair. Look us up on Google or Facebook. We'll take good care of you.
Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. We are the cornerstone of security in the Southeast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services again. I'm your host, Rick Strawn, president of Paradigm Security Services, and we're excited to be with you today on Business RadioX. We're coming to you from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, located in beautiful Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel in Duluth, Georgia. Little plug for my sponsor here, Soesby's Garage. If you are a mechanical technician and you're looking for a job, he is desperately looking for help. But you better be a good one, because he doesn't hire anybody but that, and he will take care of you as long as you take care of his clients. Each week we plan to feature businesses in the Atlanta area, especially those that serve Gwinnett County. And while all businesses have security concerns, we're not all about physical security in every business, and we will touch base on all that and related aspects of security through the course of each show. I'm very happy today to have Mr. Clint Dixon, and Clint is candidate for the State Senate seat of District 45, and you know, I'm familiar with you. You're all over Facebook. You're out here prior to COVID, pressing the flesh a lot, and you're constantly on phones, and you know, you've got a little bit of background in public service. Let me just ask you this. It's kind of what I usually start with. Who is Clint Dixon, and where'd you come from? What got you into this, and lead it up to why would you want to do this and run for the state senate?
Thank you for having me on today, Rick. It's a real honor to be here. Who is Clint Dixon? Born and raised here in Gwinnett County. Graduated from Central Gwinnett
Awesome.
Back in the late 90s. Moved all the way to Buford. Moved a long way in my life.
Long trek.
That's right. Started out in the real estate business in 2003 in acquisitions and development for a regional home builder. I did that up until the Great Recession hit. Had to reinvent myself at that point in time. I mean, it went from doing very well to, you know, the real estate business got hit, you know, right in the face with this past recession, and you know, went from doing really well to almost 2 years of making about $1,800, and had to reinvent myself and started working for banks, disposing of loss share assets for the FDIC. Built my business back up and got back into the residential acquisition and development business a few years ago, and it's been doing really well with the COVID coming out. You know, with that pandemic that took a little bit of a hit, you know, about 30% for a few weeks, but last week our sales have gotten right back up, so we're excited about that.
I'm so looking forward to this economy getting going again.
Yes, I am as well. Moving on from that, you know, as far as public service, this is my first time seeking public office. But I have served on the Gwinnett County Water and Sewer Authority, served on it for about 2.5 years during the recession, and then I moved on from there and served on the Gwinnett County Planning Commission for about 9 years, and stepped down from that position in January.
That's quite a job right there.
Yes, sir.
I know anybody that's had to deal with any type of zoning, planning, all that, very familiar with how hard that job is.
Yes, sir, it is.
I think you worked for a while with Paula Hastings. I think she was over there, wasn't she?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she was. Yeah, Paula and I have been friends for, over a decade. She's,
that's quite an Energizer bunny there.
Yes, she is.
Well, why are you running for the state senate? What gets you into this, and what gets your fire burning on that?
Yeah, I've had a heart for public service for years. We've wanted to serve, looked at running for county commissioner a few different times, but, the stars, I guess, lack of a better word, didn't align. And, Renee Unterman, who currently holds this seat, decided to move on and run for Congress. So the seat opened up. I'm at a point in my career where I've got the flexibility and the schedule to run and to serve, and just jumped in with both feet. I announced my campaign just over a year ago, with the intent to bring energetic, conservative leadership and fresh ideas to the job. I want to be a leader that's determined to put our families first every day and with every decision. I'm committed to Gwinnett and our families. My family goes back 4 generations here in Gwinnett. My grandfather had a small farm off of Bramlett Shoals Road in Decula years and years ago, and I want to ensure. I feel like our conservative values has been a big part of what's made Gwinnett what it is today, and I want to protect those values under the Gold Dome for the next generation.
Well, I know you've gotten several endorsements from around. I think one's from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce.
Who are some of your people that are endorsing you?
I've also received the endorsement from Philip Beard in Buford, and Steve Edwards in Sugar Hill. They've endorsed me as well.
Well, I tell you, there's so many issues going on in Gwinnett County and at the state level. Let's talk for a minute about transportation. How would you address the traffic congestion in Gwinnett?
Yeah, great question. I was opposed to the transportation referendum, bringing MARTA into Gwinnett. I thought that, bringing MARTA heavy rail 6 miles into Gwinnett, at a cost of a couple $2 billion that would take a decade to complete, and other things in that proposal I just disagreed with. And I think that we could use a fraction of that money and help the traffic situation through some innovative ideas, help folks out, because it is a complex issue in Gwinnett. And while I was on the Planning Commission, they had done the 2040 plan, and they're projecting our population over the next 20 years to go from probably right at 1 million folks to somewhere between 1.5 million to 1.8 million. So we've got a lot of future growth in Gwinnett. I think that, like the Sugarloaf extension, making it a good part of it is a limited access highway now, and it comes to 316, and it's projected to go all the way to Peachtree Industrial, across 85 up to Buford. I think projects like that will help get folks off the minor collector roads and onto a limited access highway when they're having to go to work, going to Atlanta or getting to the highway. I think that'll help more than bringing heavy rail in. Another project we need to look at is the Ronald Reagan extension. It stops at Pleasant Hill. It was originally slated to go to 85 with an interchange, but they stopped it because it was going to be about 5 miles of bridging over swampland, and they thought the cost was too great. But I think in lieu of bringing heavy rail into the county, I think that would be a project we need to look at, and we need to look at other projects as well.
Well, there's a lot of jurisdictions outside of Georgia and even in Georgia that have mighty long bridge structures.
Yes, sir.
So, it's just one of those things where the land is the land, and if you got a direction to go, you have to figure out a way to go there, and bridges are nothing new.
Yeah, and, Atlanta's not built, for heavy rail. We don't have any geographical boundaries, with water or mountains, and we've got such a sprawling, metropolitan area. I think the cost of trying to, rail at this time, and as far as we've gotten with the population we've got, I just think that I don't think it's economically possible, in my opinion.
And it's going to be very interesting to see what comes up on the next agenda, and as far as the next people get to vote on everything, it's what ends up being the final product they put out to the voters. It's going to be a real interesting process.
Yes,
it has been so far, that's for sure. The economy. Everybody knows you mentioned something about the great, having to redo your business plan during the recession and all. We had to do the same thing. We were in, most of our security was major construction. And where major construction went during during that time, it completely stopped.
Yes, sir.
So we had to stop and redo our business and go into different forms of security, but different targets for clients. But in the economy right now, it's not good, that's for sure. It has been good. Now we're into this COVID-19. I hate to even call it a recession because it's not the same type of thing that happened during 2008. But, bottom line is the economy's hurting. We've got to get back to work. How do we get things back on track as we come out of this coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, we've got to get aggressive. My experiences in the last recession, you can't be caught flat-footed. You've got to have ideas. You've got to roll up your sleeve and work hard, and that's
be proactive.
That's right, and that's what I've done. I confront everything in life with hard work and determination. It's how my family and I survived the Great Recession in the real estate business, and I plan on taking that same tenacity to the Senate, and we do. We've got to get aggressive. First, I think, we've got to balance the budget. I mean, that's going to be a big deal. I mean, they're talking like $3.6 billion shortfall. That's a lot of belt tightening that the state's going to have to do, but we've got to protect our priorities as well. It's a complex issue. The state revenue is going to take a hit from this, and it's going to require some tough decisions to be made. And I'll fight to cut regulation and red tape, to help get our businesses back up and running as quick as possible. I support the governor's efforts with the Georgia First Commission to help small businesses, including ensuring that state contracts contract with Georgia small businesses in state projects to help them get going. We've just got to get everything back up and running as quick as we can, and at the same time keeping folks safe. I mean, that's important as well. I don't want to lose sight of that. I also will explore any targeted tax cuts or policy changes that would help sectors hardest hit by this pandemic to get them up and running. And more importantly, it's time for us to focus on bringing new businesses to Georgia away from China, in targeted sectors, including the production of medical supplies and pharmaceuticals.
Well, I know, there's a lot of talk about the federal government and what it does with businesses with China, but there's a lot of that goes on state level too.
Yes, sir.
So what is your position, and I think you kind of hinted on it there, but as far as breaking some of those chains of those logistical changes with China, bringing our business, our manufacturing, our stuff back to the state of Georgia from China.
Yeah, we've got to. I mean, it's imperative. I've got a neighbor that lives across the street. She's a superhero. She's a nurse at Gwinnett Medical, and they had and they had issues with their protective gear, just keeping the staff, the doctors and the nurses, with masks and gloves, and we can't be reliant on whether it's China or any other foreign country. We need to produce that core, whether it's medical supplies or whatever that is in the business world. We need to bring that back to Georgia and to the United States and produce those things here.
Well, we have the CDC right here in Georgia, and we've got a lot of manufacturing and a lot of that's the capabilities of doing the drugs, doing the drugs that go into the major drugs, the parts of it. My brain's going blank. But the bottom line is we have a lot of the ability to bring that in here, and with CDC being here, there's just so much opportunity for people that do that to do it here in Georgia.
I agree.
So we just need to focus on getting some of that stuff. Well, how will you address the growing issue of gangs and other threats to public safety that is going on? Well, for one thing, in Gwinnett, a lot of people don't acknowledge it, but we have a gang problem here.
We do. We really do. And I was fortunate, I served on the planning commission with Chuck Warrington. He was the chairman of our
Chuck
group.
Very well.
And he was, over the CID for a number of years before.
We do that CID.
Yeah. And, they dealt with it a lot with tagging and having to remove that, in a timely manner. I mean, we do have a real gang issue. And, bottom line, we got to support our local and state law enforcement. We've got to give them the tools to protect us, but also to protect themselves. I mean, with a population over 1 million folks, we've got to combat gangs and human trafficking. One program that I support is the 287G program, which gives our sheriff department the power to do background checks on folks if they're arrested. I think that's an important tool. There's been some misconstrued information about that program, but I support that program. We need to continue it in Gwinnett.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's going to be an important issue, and it's going to be important for whoever we get in as the sheriff to be behind that as well, because that's a big part of our law enforcement, is that sheriff's office, and their support is important.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know that you've got certain bills and stuff that what are your top priorities if elected? And kind of on a side note, House Bill 302, kind of explain to people what that's about and what your position is on it.
Yeah, House Bill 302, it was proposed last session, and it was proposed by the Realtors and the Home Builders Association, and essentially it took architectural controls and other zoning controls away from the cities and the county. That was a proposal to take
Local
those,
control.
yes, sir, and give it to the state, and they would create overlay districts. I'm strongly opposed to that bill. I think that land use, architectural controls, zoning controls, it's a local issue. It's a home rule issue. I think that your cities and your counties, they've got the personnel on staff, the professional planners, to vet those cases, to set that up to. And then they've also, they've got the different boards, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, to vet those cases even further before it gets to the elected officials to make a decision. And I think that process is very important in a county, with over 1 million folks and with all the growth that we're experiencing again. I think those different levels are more important than creating just a blanket overlay district. And you can, as long as you kind of play in that sandbox, you can do whatever, is allowed there. And I think that's a mistake. The cities, especially in Gwinnett County, have invested heavily in their downtown areas, and they've created great value in the cities, and I could name off several of them
absolutely.
that are doing just a great job.
Fine example, Swanee.
Yes, sir. Yes, they're doing a great job. The city of Lawrenceville, they're working really hard to revitalize their downtown, and it's beautiful.
Doing a great job. Chuck's doing a great job out there.
Yes, sir, he is. And I tell you, taking that control away would be a huge mistake. I think that then the state or these other agencies would capitalize on that investment from our local, jurisdictions, and then they would erode away at it. I mean, I think that it's just simply it's a local issue that can be better managed and protect the citizens, at that level, and would be a mistake taking that control away.
Is there anything else that I know you've got other what you consider top priorities, and I say that with there's so many things that they may not be top priorities, but they're important. Kind of touch on some of those.
Absolutely. I tell you, from launching the campaign, they've changed quite a bit with COVID-19. One which I've spoken on already is, getting our economy roaring again, getting our people back to work, addressing the pending, state budget shortfalls in a conservative way that eliminates waste, which is a top priority of mine in itself, is eliminating, government waste, funding priorities and not raising taxes. Also public safety, which we've touched on, is another key point. Keeping our families safe, and continuing to crack down on gangs and human trafficking, and supporting, programs like 287G, to deport criminal illegals. Also, I'm a huge, proponent of protecting life. I support the Heartbeat Bill. I'll be a champion for any new legislation that comes up under the Gold Dome there. I stand with our governor there. I've been endorsed by the Family Policy Alliance of Georgia, and that's another value of mine that is a very top priority. Want to protect the Second Amendment, and our Georgia values as well.
We've had a lot of attacks on the Second Amendment, and that's one of the big issues. And it's not just with Georgians. I mean, look at Virginia; they've just gone crazy. What are some of the things that you see that you might be able to help with, stir up, promote, whatever, with regards to the Second Amendment issues? Yeah,
great question. A little bit more about my background. I've been a avid hunter and fisherman my entire life. I've got a carry permit, and if we've got time, I'll go into a funny door knocking story with a retired Marine. But I will be a champion to protect the Second Amendment. I think that being a conservative, you've got to keep government in check. They will continue to erode at your at your rights if you let them. And I think that as far as carry permits, they're important. But the Second Amendment, it gives us the right to possess and carry firearms, and that just, it's black and white for me. So I think any legislation that would try to erode away at that, I'd be a champion to stop that. And to kind of go back to my my funny campaign story, this was in Sugar Hill. Met the gentleman at his door. He was reading my my palm card, and he got down to the Second Amendment, and we talked about it. And he said, "He goes, I want to see if you can walk the walk." And he was a Marine, so you can imagine Clint Eastwood. What's going through your mind at that time? Yeah, and I'm vertically challenged, so he's 6'2", Marine. He's got his vet hat on. I thanked him for his service. And so we had he was very stern, and he was like, well, I want to see if you can walk the walk. Well, he asked me if I had a firearm on me. I said, well, no, sir, I got a carry permit, but I keep it in the vehicle. And he said, well, what good's that going to do you if you
True Marine?
That's right. And so he proceeded to he pulled a pistol out behind his pocket. We were standing on his front porch, and he unloaded it, and he said, if you can break this down and put it back together, he goes, you'll be on the way to earning my vote. And I said, well, this is a first. So I sat there and broke it down, put it back together, and then he invited me inside, and we were having small talk about the small group of vets that he plays poker with, and he wanted to introduce me to them. And if you can imagine, give you kind of a visual, he lived in a split foyer house. So we go in, he invites me downstairs to the garage, and he had a finished room, and that was kind of his trophy room where he had animals he had hunted on the wall, and he had his guns out, and he presented me with an AR-15, and he said, now if you can break this down and put it back together, you've earned my vote. So I sat down, and luckily enough I knew how to do it, and after about 30 minutes and small talking, I broke it down, put it back together, and earned his vote. And him and I, we talk every couple of weeks still.
Fantastic. Of course, he should have been okay if you just said, no, I've already earned your vote.
That's right.
But what else can I get? You're going to give it somebody else's vote.
That's right.
But yeah, there's so much going on with people have taken so much advantage through this COVID-19, and I won't get off track and hit that, but I got a lot of views and opinions on that, and I'm sure you do too. And we talked a little bit about once the government, they will do whatever they can do and take it as far as they can take it until they're stopped by the people.
That's correct.
And that's the nature of government. Is the more they can control, the better they feel. They forget when they were just the citizens and not in the government, but which is another issue that I've got. But we won't go there. Let me ask you this. Now, you've been in the real estate industry. You've been in planning type in this local public service. When you really get down to it, what's the best thing in your background that prepares you for this position of running for state senate?
Oh, that's a great question. A few different things come to mind, but I would have to say, my work ethic, my tenacity to get the job done, whatever task is put in front of me. It's how I confront anything in life, a challenge or whatever it may be is hard work and tenacity and to finish the drill. And I'll take that to the state senate when I'm passionate about these issues we talked about today, or when other issues come up that I'm not aware of now. I will be a worker, and then I'll be a fighter in the Senate for our Gwinnett families and for our conservative values.
Well, I know we need somebody there. I know Renee's done a good job in this position for so many years, and be interesting to see how the next person. It's going to be very important, not interesting, but very important to see how the next person that comes into this position, do they carry that on, or do they decide to, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, we're going to do it a different way. And I'm not a firm believer on just walking in, turning the box upside down, shaking it, seeing what falls out, then kick it around and decide what I want to play with. You got to go through, and if things are working and things are doing, take the good, move forward with them, take a hard look at all the aspects. And from what I've gathered from talking to you, that's kind of where I see you coming from. Oh,
absolutely. Yes. And like I said, the heartbeat bill that she carried last session, I'll be a champion for that, or, and any new legislation that pertains to that, I'll be a fighter for that. And I've definitely got some big shoes to fill. She's done a great job over the years. And absolutely, I have some of my own ideas, but definitely not going to come in and wipe the slate clean and start over with a fresh agenda. I think she's done a lot of good for Gwinnett County and for the state, and I'll go through, like you said, systematically and think through and listen to my constituents as well. I mean, that's another thing that I've been telling voters this entire time is, on a lot of my mailers and all my information, I give my personal cell phone. And, I let them know that I work for them. They're my boss. I'll always be accessible to them. When folks have received mailers, or if I've left them a voicemail and they call back and I answer the phone, it surprises them. They say that they've either never heard from a politician, or they've heard from, volunteers, or they've gotten robocalls, but never directly from the candidate. And that's something that I will commit to all my constituents and anybody in Gwinnett. If they need me, they can call me and voice their concerns, and I'll listen. And I'll take it to the Gold Dome, because that's who I work for, is the people of Gwinnett.
Well, I don't know. In my business and police work and everything else, and one of the things I stress is communication is key. And if you're not willing to stay in close communication with your constituents, then how are you going to how are you going to know really when you get down really to the grassroots level of your constituency, how are you going to know what they really want?
Right.
So to me, communication is paramount to anything, whether it be business, whether it be police work, whether it be, whatever it is, you have got to communicate not only with your staff and with the people that are there, and which makes me kind of think, a lot of people, they surround themselves with staff that are pretty well, that are basically the same thought process, the same 100% process, basically become yes people and tell you what you want to hear. How are you going to address that as far as your staff area of getting people that, for me, I've got people in my office or on my staff that drive me crazy because every time I turn around, they're disagreeing with me.
Right.
But by the same token, they're important, because if everybody agrees with me and I make a mistake or I'm making a bad choice or decision, then who's going to look like the fool? Me.
Correct.
So how are you going to address that with your staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I learned, some of these principles from my dad with his small business, and through my career, is you're completely right. You cannot surround yourself with folks first that are going to be yes people and that aren't going to challenge some of the decisions or some of the thought processes that you have. And then second, you've got to surround folks with that have got skill sets that you may, in areas you may be weak with. And I think that's very important. You want to surround yourself with folks that got different skills and different thought processes, and you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. You always want to get the best and the brightest around you.
You're surrounded by the smartest people in the room.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, I know it. Just as a business person, that the idea is to bring good, qualified people in. The day that I think I know every single thing there is to know about my business, and I have to do it all, I'm in trouble.
Yes, sir.
So you've got to bring people in here that you can, and having that trust. You got to have the trust in the people that you bring in, that if they do disagree with you or they do push you around a little bit out of your box, think about it. And,
That's correct.
If you're willing to do that, I think you'll make a good senator.
Thank you.
So, well, capping state spending and returning money to taxpayers. What are your plans?
Yeah, I tell you, we've touched on it, talking about the shortfalls with the budget,
Yep.
Earlier in the conversation. But, one example, as far as capping spending, and this happens at the local level as well as the state level, different departments, they're given, an allotted budget. And if they don't use it, they lose it. They lose that portion they don't spend, which creates wasteful spending and, buying things that you may not need. I think that's a mistake. I think that policy needs to change, where departments should be incentivized to stay under budget, and then the rest of that money needs to be returned to taxpayers. So that's one example.
How are you going to handle the people that say, and you're going to come into a lot of it, because every department's not going to, every department is going to be the same. They're not going to want to cut their budget.
Mm-hmm.
We're too important. You can't cut our budget. And how are you going to address that? How are you going to deal with that? Because you know that you're going to run into nobody wants their budget cut.
Right.
And under these circumstances, I personally think we're going to have to be a team, and everybody's going to have to understand that somewhere along the way, the budget's got to be cut. What part do you want cut?
Right. Yeah, and that's a complex issue, and we're going to have to roll our sleeves up, and it's got to be department by department, and you've got to look and see, what they're spending their money on and where that's going. And like I said, and there will be some folks, like you said, that push back, on any kind of budget cuts, but I think, and this won't be, through all the different departments, but everybody seems to be coming together, with this virus, under the same thought process that we're all in this together. We're social distancing. We're all taking the steps to keep folks safe, and especially the more sensitive groups. They need to stay home longer. But as far as when we start having to cut the budget, at the state, I think everybody's going to be, not everybody, but I'm hoping most folks, will be willing to do their part, and step up, roll their sleeves up and do their part. And I saw an article today from the AJC that our lieutenant governor is cutting his salary 14%, which I believe is what the governor's asking the different departments to cut it. So, I commend the Lieutenant Governor for
Absolutely
stepping forward and doing that.
Well, it's going to be important for people to be willing to sacrifice something. The main thing is I don't want to see certain parts of it say, well, everybody needs to sacrifice but me. And unfortunately, I think what we've really got to do is keep in mind that this is not a red and blue issue with the coronavirus. It's not a Democrat, Republican.
Absolutely.
It's not conservative, liberal. Bottom line is we're all in this thing, and we can either all come out of it and do better and still keep our personal agendas when it's all over with, whether it be conservative, liberal, whatever. But the bottom line is we've got to get out of this. We've got to get our country and our state and our businesses and all rolling again, because that's what's going to get us out of it. Are people still going to get sick? Of course they're going to get sick. We get sick every day. Somebody gets sick. But at the same time, you cannot have the solution worse than the solution to one problem worse than the other problem. As far as the economy, you got to have the economy. We don't have a country if you don't have it.
I agree, and that's going to be our single biggest challenge over the next 12 months or so, I believe.
I think your biggest challenge is going to get people coming together on that being the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a biggie. Well, Clint, thank you very much. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, talk to you, get some signs, get some whatever, some pamphlets, some handouts, if they want to do all this and get in touch with you and maybe help you out or ask you questions about as far as your stances that we haven't covered today, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for asking that. One last big point, that I've been sharing with voters is I will be accessible to each and every one of you. You will have my personal cell phone number. You'll have my email address. I will call you back. I work for you. And that's one big part of my campaign slogan is, as I've made calls and knocking on doors, is that I will be accessible to you and you'll be able to reach me whenever you need me. My cell phone number is 404-862-5000. My email address it's real simple. It's just clint@voteclintdixon.com. And would love to hear from any of you. If you've got questions for me, you've got concerns, you want to sign, you want to get become part of the team, would love to have you. If you live in Senate District 45, would love to get your support and your vote. And I humbly ask for everybody's prayers.
And your boundaries on that district are what?
Yeah, another great question, Rick. It runs the whole northern swath of Gwinnett County. It starts over in Suwanee, runs through Sugar Hill, Buford, moves across where a piece of Brazelton drops down in Gwinnett, parts of Decula over to Auburn, and then there's a little section of it that runs south of the Mall of Georgia down around the Collins Hill area.
Awesome. Well, thank you again very much for being here. And I know what you mean about people getting in touch with you, having your cell phones. That's one of the things that in my company, I'm the owner and president and CEO, but my cell phone number's on every business card, and all my clients have my cell phone, and they use it far more than I'd like them to.
I'm sure they do.
but at the same time, I'm happy to answer any calls. Well, thank you again for joining us on Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. Remember, you can join us live every Wednesday at 11:30 in the morning, or you can listen to our show anytime you want by going to businessradiox.com, clicking on the Gwinnett Studio, and then click Case in Point. Be sure and have your friends go listen to this show so they can make an informed decision when they go to the polls this year if they're in that district. And really, for any of them, we've got other things on there. Join us next week at 11:30 when we will talk with business leaders about their businesses and related security issues in today's world. Thanks again to my guest, Clint Dixon, again, candidate for State Senate District 45. And for Mike, my producer, and Miss Amanda sitting back over there in the corner. And again, I'm Rick Strawn, and remember, at Paradigm Security Services, we cover more than just your assets.